everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 796 with a review of Sinners. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are returning to the theaters to watch the latest film from Ryan Coogler, Sinners. And to get us started, Stephen, I have one probably obvious question for you, which is, when I invited you to St. Stephen's Day, were you aware you would be attending a gathering of vampires?
Well, it was ironic because you invited me in, but it was very formal. You know, you were all just like standing at the doorway waiting for me to enter, which I don't think is how the rules work, but I guess you were trying to do a golden rule type thing. You know, vampires treat us the way they want to be treated. No, I thought a lot about Irish music and vampirism as I watched this movie. I think that's going to be a fun thing to dig into.
Yeah.
It was good times.
Yeah, it was definitely not a thing I was prepared for. And as it gets deeper and deeper and deeper into it, I was like having like an extra special sensation watching this film.
Now, did you watch this movie alone, or did you have companionship?
No, I had companionship with this one.
Okay. Cool. I'm curious how that stuff was received.
But yeah, we'll get into it later.
We'll get into it. Yeah, maybe in spoilers or main review. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, Stephen, are you ready to get into Sinners?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's take a listen to the trailer for Sinners and come back and give everybody a review.
We've been gone a long time. We back now. You twins? Nah, we cousins.
There are legends of people with the gift of making music so true. It can conjure spirits from the past and the future. This gift can bring fame and fortune.
Will somebody take me in your eyes?
But it also can pierce the veil between life and death.
Listen here, this ain't no house party. Shit.
Y'all ready to drink? Y'all ready to sweat till y'all stink?
You want some?
You keep dancing with the devil.
Careful, boy. You gonna bite off more than you can chew.
One day he's gonna follow you home.
We got us a problem, y'all.
What the hell going on?
Oh, we heard tale of a party. This world already left you for dead. I can save you from your fate.
You don't need no saving.
Yes, you do.
And you are?
I am. Your way out. Don't cry. It's all better now.
Yes, I lied to you.
I don't believe in magic. Ghosts, demons. Just power.
Somebody please take me.
We gonna kill every last one of you.
Hey, I ain't mean to scare you. Thought y'all done forgot about me in here. Come on, open the door, let me on out of here.
Stay. It's you?
Of course it's me, open the door.
That ain't your brother.
Lied to you.
Yo, smell anything? I think I shot myself.
All right, so that was the trailer for Sinners. It is a story of two brothers who have been away from home for a long time and come home to kind of start up a juke joint. And it's about the the stuff they encounter when they come home to do that. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Sinners?
So I saw Ryan Coogler giving a promotional video a few weeks before Sinners came out, talking about the filming techniques and, what film it was made on and how he handled different aspect ratios and how he made it specific for the IMAX experience. And it convinced me to go see this movie in IMAX, which is not a thing I would have ever thought to do from watching the trailer. It just doesn't seem like the kind of movie that you necessarily need to go to an IMAX theater for. Yeah. And I am glad I did, because this movie is a fucking roller coaster. And more than the visuals, the sound of an IMAX theater is just so excellent for what Ryan Coogler is doing here. I didn't really know what to make of this movie from the trailers. Like, of course, it's Ryan Coogler with Michael B. Jordan. I know I'm going to watch whatever the movie is, but I am not a horror person, as has been well established, on this podcast. And just in general, I couldn't really tell, was he doing a kind of slashery type movie? How was he weaving it in with the Jim Crow era South? I just didn't really know what this movie was going to be. And I understand now why no trailer can tell you what this movie is, because this movie is fucking nuts. And it's awesome. And it blows my mind that Ryan Coogler was able to, A, get this movie greenlit at the budget that he did, and B, pull it off where audiences are flocking to this movie, and it is doing amazing. Like, my IMAX was packed, and this was a Wednesday night showing, the Wednesday after it came out. This movie, it is so messy, but packed with interesting ideas, and I have to love it, even if I feel like there are things I want to criticize about it, and we'll get into it. But overall, my feeling was just blown away that he got the Jordan Peele, basically. He got the, like, you get to do whatever the hell you want, and audiences are going to follow along with you and eat out of the palm of your hand. What surprised me was how much this movie is about the blues, not just like peripherally has some blues stuff woven through it, but for the first, I'm going to say, like 45 minutes of the movie, if you didn't see a trailer, you would think you are just watching a movie about a blues juke joint event, right? It's like Lovers Rock, but for the blues, in Jim Crow era South. And it is so good at that. Like, it takes a little while to pick up speed. Like, this is where I think the trust the audience has to have in Ryan Coogler really comes in handy, because for the first 20-25 minutes, you're really getting a lot of introduction to characters, kind of slowly watching them collect the gang of people that will be there that night. And it doesn't always move with that much propulsion, right? It's the kind of thing where I was starting to wonder, is this movie not going to deliver on the promise? Because this kind of feels like it's dragging its feet in a few places. But when they get everyone together and they are in the juke joint, it is just fantastic. Yeah. There is a scene in this movie. It occurs around the midpoint, maybe a little before, which I'm going to say is kind of like if Elvis's mashups were visual and had a point. Like, there's a thing that is combining the genres of what informed the blues and what the blues was informed by, packed into just an incredibly fluid, like, dance through the juke joint that fucking rules. I have to assume if there was any one inspiration for this movie, Ryan Coogler had the idea of wanting to do that and then wanting to craft a whole movie around it. And what that is not just a celebration of music, but also it's playing with, like, joy and sexuality, but also threat in a way that is really hard to explain. There's like a driving rhythm to it, a supernatural power to the way music brings people and their pain together. And I feel like from that flowed this whole idea of, I'm going to make it a horror movie and also a movie about the blues. And that scene, my jaw was just on the floor. I thought that was so damn good. I wanted to stand up and cheer in the middle of the movie. when it then becomes the vampire movie that it promises, I think it delivers well enough on that. I can't say I actually cared that much about a lot of the horror that comes at the end. Like there are some tonal mashups where there's comedy at times that I don't expect there to be comedy. There are really kick-ass action sequences that are then kind of undercut by a joke or one of surprisingly many references to cunnilingus. There are a few things that make me feel like this movie is kind of shaggy and overstuffed and maybe doesn't entirely know what it wants to say, but the filmmaking behind it, the audacity to make it, and Ludwig Göransson's A, the score, and B, the soundtrack, it is just so great that I'm really, really happy I saw this in IMAX. We can talk about a ton of details, but basically, I think this is a wild, packed, messy-ass ride, and I am so glad that it exists, even though I see like 15 points. I don't see 1 point, and it's really fun to explore what the different things are that Ryan is playing with. We'll probably talk about that when we talk about the ethnicity of the vampires, among other things. But what a fun, chaotic thing to try to unpack. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you, I was curious going in, but I wasn't quite sure what I should be expecting. I was definitely not avoiding trailers, but for whatever reason, I didn't constantly see this trailer beforehand. I just saw it like twice, I think. So I didn't know exactly what to expect other than there was going to be some vampires and, some Michael B. Jordans.
Yeah.
So as this movie started to progress, I was feeling it. I was into it. And then it just keeps piling on more different sort of interesting ideas. And it starts to play with the genres that it's in. Not really play with the genres, but plays with ideas in the space of the genres that it's trying to do. And I just found every next thing it sort of layered on top super compelling and interesting, and just like there was always like a new nugget around every corner to like kind of like, oh wow, this is an interesting take on this, or like, oh, it's really weird that they're doing these two things juxtaposed to each other, and it really brought me in. We've talked a lot recently about films that talk about the power of music, and I've celebrated parts of things like A Complete Unknown or The Ballad of Wallace Island, where it's like you can see somebody watching somebody play a song, and you feel what they're feeling when that song means to them. The song doesn't necessarily translate to you to necessarily mean the same thing, but you're so able to look in somebody's eyes as they look into somebody playing music and what they feel, that it's like, it feels transportive. This film sort of takes that and says like, what if it's literally transportive? And what if music is not just a thing that we metaphorically say is powerful, but we talk about it as an actual literal powerful thing that's so powerful, it breaks the barrier of what we are and what we're connected to. And I think that idea is so beautifully shown off and portrayed in this film. But then it goes beyond that, just to what does the celebration of that music mean to different groups of people, and not always just one group of people. This film is balancing a lot of really interesting things. You kind of talked as though you want to hold conversations about the different groups of people in this film towards later.
It depends. I don't know what degree of what constitutes a spoiler. I will tell you, some of the singing in this movie was a big surprise to me, like who was singing and what they sounded like, in a way that felt spoilery, which is why I don't know exactly how much we want to touch on all of that. But
okay,
I'll follow your lead.
We can hold it a little bit. There's some stuff I want to say that's like directly tied to it, and I can save it towards a little bit later. But let's just say that it would be really easy for somebody to make a film like this where the monster is racism. Right.
Of course.
Like just this pure metaphor. Here's the evil racist people. They're the monsters. Let's call it a day. This film, in a really interesting way, is taking two different groups of oppressed people and putting them on either side of this conflict. But their motivations are not race. Their motivations are purely their own connection to this power that is music, and their own history with it. And there's a lot of interesting things that it's doing, which we can talk about later, that just every time it went on, like at first it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, huh. And then as it got deeper, I was like, holy shit, like this is freaking amazing. And also I really like, there's some stuff we can talk about in spoilers that, you know, this film for the most part is playing within the normal rules of vampires, lore wise. But there's some stuff that felt like a new thing to me that, at least in the stories that I consume, hasn't really been a part of it. That kind of leads into that communal aspect of music that I thought was just such a cool, interesting idea that I was just like, oh man, this is really like the whole movie. I kept being like, I don't know exactly what it's all saying, but it's fucking rad, whatever it's saying. And it makes me think and makes me, just instantly care about what's happening of all these characters. And I think that this film is just like, not only is the two films that this film is combining, not only are each of them equally interesting and good at what they are specifically doing, but like the overall package for me, like, I mean, you talked a little bit about how like there's so much happening that it's hard to sort of gauge. Like to me, it was just kind of like, I forgot the other thing. I was just excited about whatever the next piece it was layering on was. And it just, for me, it just kept this momentum building where like by the time it ends, I'm like, I can't even complain because I'm just so entertained by what it was doing that it just lingers with you as you leave. So
no, I mean, I feel the same way. Like I can look back and question the cohesiveness of some ideas. Like you mentioned the movie This Could Have Been, where the enemy is racism and vampires are a metaphor for racism. And it's funny because that isn't what it is when you look back from the end, but they're also playing with that in a way. Like I feel like there is a sense of assimilationism being the enemy, like the allure of let's tear down separate spaces and just all be together. Don't worry, don't be afraid of me. You don't need your own culture anymore. You know, there's also, it's very hard to not think about Elvis as I watch this movie and think of Elvis as the vampire who like feasted off of the blood of black music and took it and appropriated it and made it be this thing for everyone else. Like that, it almost feels like Ryan Coogler is getting away with using a metaphor without using it because he's interested in another very interesting, very specific metaphor, but he's almost getting both at the same time. You know,
but
it's just very interesting.
We can get into it in spoilers, but I think there is a sense that the vampire doesn't care that it's black music, right? It's specifically the power that has and the connection to the ability to like. So one of the characters talks about vampires or people who have been turned into vampires. Their soul is trapped. They cannot leave. But we're also establishing that this music transcends that barrier of not being able to leave, and that there's something that it wants that is not purely assimilationist or, you know, it is the connection to other things that it warrants. And it's there's an interesting thing that it's playing with that is not purely, I want to take what you have, and more I'm drawn to what you have because that takes me to a place that I want to be. And it's, there might not be a distinction there, but it feels like the method is not it's not purely trying to emulate what it sees. It is literally, I need that connection to elsewhere. So I don't know.
We can talk about it in spoilers, but there's also a third metaphor, which is like artistic integrity. You know, like there are, it would be too spoilery to talk in depth, but there are twins in this movie, and I think there are twins for a very specific reason because they make different choices along the way. And we can talk in spoilers in more depth, but there's just something. There's something here where it almost feels like a cheat code because I feel like he's getting to have 2 or 3 different meanings for everything, and they don't agree with each other. Like sometimes they even disagree with each other, but it's so provocative and interesting. While I'm watching it, I'm just shoveling popcorn and enjoying the hell out of the ride.
Yeah.
I think people have been talking a lot about for I'm going to say probably unfair reasons about Ryan Coogler's the deal that he got with this movie. He got pretty good terms in making it, and they've been describing it as unprecedented, which isn't true. Like a handful of people have gotten it before. But in the process, people have talked about how Ryan Coogler is a pretty singular talent, which is that he can make giant spectacles that are still critically beloved and draw a ton of people to watch them. And I think in that regard, he really is going the Nolan route. Like, this is his Oppenheimer, right? This is his, look, I've made enough cred giving you Creed and Black Panther movies. Watch me draw a massive crowd for, like, a much more idiosyncratic, like, I will literally put a movie in IMAX theaters that no one expects to play in an IMAX because that is the power I wield. And it's just really cool to see someone attempt that and to see them pull it off. So yeah, I don't know. I just think this movie is whatever I thought it was. It managed to be more than that in a way that was very, like, exhilarating to me.
Yeah.
And also Delroy Lindo is awesome here, and that was fun to see as Delta Slim. big fan. Probably he might have the most, like, beginning, middle, end satisfying arc in terms of where a character begins and where they go out. Though there's a lot, and we haven't even talked about, I won't go into details yet, but there is an epilogue in this movie that I'm going to say is about as wild a shift as, like, the Brutalist ending. And it just cemented to me, man, Coogler can get away with anything, and I'm here for it.
All right.
Yep.
So, do you want to save all, like, the really deep stuff for spoilers? Do you want to just kind of wrap up?
I think we might as well.
Okay.
Then we don't need to worry about what is or isn't a spoiler detail.
Makes sense. All right. So, as we just said, we're going to give you verdicts right now. So let's do that. Stephen Miller, if you're going to give us a must see, reckon with a caveat, wait for rental, pass the caveat, or a must avoid, what would you give it?
Must see. I wish Hollywood were churning out 5 to 10 of these a year. I would be so happy, but they do not happen. See, I'm not even aiming higher than 5 to 10. Like, that would satiate me. Just a handful of big budget, genuinely interesting, auteur-driven spectacles. I think the movies would be back in a big way, and I hope that someone learns a lesson from how well Sinners is doing.
See, he messed up, though, because he could have started with Sinner and had one Michael B. Jordan and then moved on to Sinners with 2.
You're right. Pull the Twister trick.
Yeah. But anyways, it's a must-see from me. This movie is fucking rad. I haven't... I wanted to go back. I didn't get to see it in IMAX because, as I mentioned, because I had a companion for the film, I had to change my scheduling ability for it, and I couldn't just, like, pick a random time to go see it. So I'm hoping I still have a chance to maybe catch it in IMAX so I can get that experience. But even in my lowly HDR by whoever the company is screening.
Yeah, Alamo has been putting that everywhere lately, but that's a diversion we don't need to go into.
Well, if I can divert for a second, they played, like, remember, I forget who it was, if it was Cinemark or somebody, when they had their laser projector, they had that stupid promo that was like, yes, the screen is still on, and it was supposed to, like, tell you how, like, deep the blacks were.
Blow your mind.
Yeah. So this HDR by, like, Brock or whatever it is also has a promo like that at Alamo, except for they've left the house lights on all the way up until the movie started. So it was like, our richest color in the history of film. Here it is, HDR. And then it was all washed out because the house lights were on.
See, the last thing I want to say on that point is I feel like billing things as HDR when you're booking the ticket is a mistake because we've all seen HFR so many times. And like, I just implicitly, my brain, when I see that is like, don't want, even though I understand what high dynamic range is, but like, there's a deeper part of me that sees that and immediately feels like revulsion to booking the ticket.
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that like if you get this projector, they force you to put that on all your screenings as some sort of marketing thing. Even though I don't even remember the name of the company, like it's probably not Brock. I think
I for some reason I want to say Bracco, like Lorraine Bracco, but I don't think that's it, and I'm not going to look it up.
Yeah, I'm not going to look it up either. Anyways, we're not here to talk about HDR. We're here to talk about Sinners. We did that already in a spoiler-free section. Let's wrap this up so we can get to spoilers, Stephen. If people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at Threads or Blue Sky at sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People could find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. That music is going to fade up. And when that music fades down, we are going to invite you in for a conversation of spoilers about Sinners. See you soon. All right, we are back. This is spoiler territory. It's the after part of a review of Sinners. We're talking full-blown spoilers. We're talking full-blown spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film, what are you doing? Go see it. Then come back and you can listen to this section. Where, Stephen, would you like to get started?
I'm not sure, because I didn't mean this to be a like let's go plot point by plot point and gush at how cool it was. More, let's have the freedom to talk about all of it so we can dissect maybe the themes or the parts of the movie that resonated with us. So let's dive into one that I know we want to talk about, which is the vampires are not just Irish. They sing beautiful Irish folk music. And I don't know about your screening, but in my screening, when Jack O'Connell first starts to sing after he's confronted the juke joint, my audience laughed a lot. Like it was
the real singing, not the picked old Robin Clean song.
No, we'll start with Picked Old Robin Clean, actually. Like when Picked Old Robin Clean was being sung, my audience was like howling with laughter. And the joke that I felt in that moment, rightly or wrongly, was this is in contrast to the blues. Like the blues is full-throated, expressive howling, and there's something about their little cute bluegrassy song that feels like constricted, you know, and it felt, I'm not going to say like a cheap joke because I laughed a lot, but it felt like it was trying to draw a contrast between these forms of expression as one is alive and one is dead, right? Like that was kind of how I interpreted it.
Well, I mean, and then the real cheap joke though is Cornbread going, actually, it's kind of good.
Yeah. And it is kind of good. I mean, we both remember the name Picked Old Robin Clean.
Yeah. The funny thing too, sorry, this is like my second digression from your statement, but if I didn't know this was a vampire movie, or knowing it's a vampire movie, those lyrics are way too on the nose.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's like, but the characters don't know it's a vampire movie, so it's like, are these vampires playing like three-dimensional chess where they're like, we're gonna eat you, do.
Yeah. It's how it plays to me. But then they sing again later when Haley Steinfeld comes out to talk to them, and it's beautiful, beautiful Irish folk music. It's beautiful and completely different from the like heart pounding music we've been listening to before.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to ask you, I know there is the broader feeling of in Irish culture, folk music is a deep expression. It's a very important thing in their history, and that is almost a parallel line to the Black experience that the movie is painting here. And I can't tell if the movie is saying both and, or still pitting them against each other in some way. And I just wonder how you think about that, because even the second time they sing, there's some laughter in my audience, and the laughter is not like it's beautiful,
Yeah.
but it also feels so tonally different and out of place with the rest of the movie. It feels like a joke, but a very beautiful joke, and I struggle to think of what the thesis is around that.
I'm not equipped to be able to answer this correctly. I'm just going to say the kind of things that I was thinking is like with obviously the blues has a lot that it's rooted in, but in the context of the juke joint and how it's being leveraged, it's sort of like the ability to get stuff out, right?
Yeah.
It's like, let's come together, let's let it all out and participate in a way. Irish folk music is about bringing everyone in. And it's sort of like the collective, we know this is back there, let's come together and celebrate even the bad things in a way that I think that it's I don't know, there's something there about the, like even the way the vampirism is being deployed in this film is kind of like, it's, you know, like to the point you were saying earlier, is like, it is assimilation, but it's also like, there aren't people that are being like, later on, and I'll get into the Rocky Road to Dublin in a little bit, but like everybody is loving it, right? Like the people who are there are participating. Like they probably had a wild time filming that scene. And it's supposed to be like kind of scary because they're all vampires, but it also looks like you want to join them of your own volition to participate in it because it looks genuinely like fun and stuff. And I think that there's just something interesting.
And is that like an evil siren song, or is that a much like Michael B. Jordan in Black Panther, hey, the villain has a point?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's trying to say. It's just really interesting the way it's kind of pitting those two things together. And yeah, if since we're there, if you want me to do my quick little spiel about the Rocky Road to Dublin,
please let's walk that Rocky Road together. Yeah,
and I am not, I'm not an English major, so I'm doing like high school level homework here.
Yeah, love it.
But I'm just going to talk to you about the lyrics of this song, and you tell me if anything sounds familiar, okay? So it's about a protagonist who's setting off to seek fortune, okay? That's just, lots of songs are about that, I guess.
Sure.
But they say goodbye to their families and friends. They settle in a place where they sort of use they charm the local women with their curious style and their swagger. They arrive at a major city where they're mocked because of their nationality. A bunch of stuff goes down, but they end up getting a fight with locals, right? And they end up fighting them with the shillelagh, which is essentially a big ass stick.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they're outnumbered at first, but then they're backed up by a bunch of people from their hometown. So I just want you to think about, like, as I said, this is my high school level book report here, but I think like that song is not accidental, right? Like there's a lot of overlap between like the journey that Smoke and Stack go on and what the person this song is about is going through. So it's just kind of interesting parallels there that are kind of like,
no, that
cool.
is super interesting. Yeah, I would have never known because I wasn't really listening to the lyrics.
Yeah, it's just like, usually I'm watching stuff and like songs are like cool in stuff, but it's like a rare time when I'm like, oh, I happen to know that song. I'm gonna look this up afterwards just to like see how specific, because it was like one of those things where it was too specific a choice of song for me to go like, this has to have something more behind it. So yeah. Just an interesting little parallel to stuff in this story.
Very interesting. I also really liked what you said about the difference between the two music genres and again, we can disclaim all we want. I am not Black and I'm not Irish, so I'm not an expert in either of these cultures, but the idea of the blues being about letting something out, letting a pain, a feeling, something out so everyone can share it, and Irish folk music is more like participating in a lineage or bringing in together. That is a really good description of the music. And then obviously, high school book report thinking here, a really interesting depiction of the two styles and of the battle between what the vampires want of adding to their number and having everyone in unison versus what the remaining people at the juke joint want, which is to forge their own path, you know, to get to be free and individual, like to express themselves individually rather than go back to their pastor father or join this group of vampires, you know. And it's just such an interesting wrinkle because there's a read of this film, and I'm not trying to be, you know, offensive by saying this. There's a way one could read this film if the music weren't so beautiful, where the Irish immigrants are an example of people who did assimilate, right, for the most part. By this point in America, you know, a lot of things, I'm sure many of the KKK people at that point, like you became passing as white. You were an honorary white person at a certain point. And you could view this movie as being about passing and the allure of passing, and Haley Steinfeld is like caught between those two worlds. And it's probably not a coincidence that the moment she crosses over and she's the first one to be brought into the vampires, and then the one who then becomes the way that the rest of them get in, you know. Like you could see this as a very, quite literally, like black and white story about what it means to believe yourself to be able to become white if you join the group or behave a certain way. And I think that's all there in the soup, right? Like that is certainly something he's playing with, but it also isn't what he's saying, because the vampires are specifically saying the world will not accept you, but we will, so let's band together. So you can also view it entirely different of saying, hey, we should have more in common, you know, solidarity forever, right? And those two things are so like at odds with each other, but they're both there the whole time, at least for me.
And the other wild card too that like makes that conversation more complicated to really like pin a thing on, you know, I'm bad at colloquialisms, is, and it ties back to the actual vampiric lore they're dealing with this in this film, is that there seems to be a shared history and knowledge and skill set even when you turn somebody. So it's not just that he's saying you'll never be accepted, but we'll accept you. He knows what the actual plan of the actual racist people that are, you know, the plan they haven't, like the bookends of this film of the person who sold them the property and what their overall plan is by the end of the film. He has the knowledge because he's turned people. The people he turned are no longer those people because he sort of like did whatever vampire, like they're part of this hive now. And he specifically like, I think he's being literal when he says you need saving because he knows that they are all doomed. It happens to be that the method for saving is extremely violent. But in theory, if they like came willingly, they would just like nibble on their neck or something, I guess. But it's then that just makes the metaphor even more complicated, where it's like you can only assimilate through violence. So I'm not prepared to talk through that whole thing, but there's just something interesting about, because first of all, I choose to believe that the first two people he turns, that racist couple at the house, I don't think they played the banjo or sung previously. Because I know a lot of people reacted when like the main vampire like speaks Chinese, because they're like, oh, he took that from the person he turned. But to me, I think it works both ways. Like he turns people and then they can all play Picked Old Robin Clean because he's passing to them in the turning this history of it. So it's like, just that was one thing that blew my mind watching the film. I was like, oh, it's just so interesting to think that like music is literally inheritable in this way. And it just made me like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it. It just was a really intriguing notion. And it wasn't like, sure, it's scary when he can speak a language he theoretically didn't know 10 minutes earlier. But like the idea that he can transfer a history of skills and like a history of whether it be pain or whatever. So it's like, even if everybody at the juke joint willingly joined their collective, he would inherit their entire histories and suddenly have that on him too. And it was just like that thought just kind of like blew my mind watching the film.
Yeah. A thing that the film picks up that is interesting, like in the soup of ideas, but I don't exactly know what to do with it, is the character of Annie, who is the woman that Smoke visits, and loves, right? Who ultimately he has to drive a stake through toward the end of the movie. And she seems to practice, like hoodoo, some kind of folklore related spirituality. And the film wants to say that there is power in that, right? And she has kind of her own aura about her. And that's there in the movie, even though it really doesn't have anything to do with the musical side of the fantasy that's happening. It's just kind of also sitting there. And it sort of feels like the world that Ryan Coogler is building is one where everyone's mythologies are right at the same time, sort of. Like all things that someone believed might be true are actually true, and they're all there, and we're just like watching this collision of a ton of different ways of telling stories or thinking about the world. That was one of those subplots that I felt like maybe didn't get enough screen time, and if I were trying to focus the movie more, I would have trimmed away at it. But it also tonally was very cool to have her in the mix.
And I think my explanation for it, and I'm like tiptoeing on a few different bullets, so I'm gonna like mess up the transition properly, but to me, the reason why that's there is because they're selling this idea of the power of music being real and being literal. It's not just I feel connected to past and future ancestors. It's I literally am connected. I'm transported. Right. I'm breaking down that barrier to connect to something outside of myself. And I think that if all the hoodoo was gone, it would feel just like a metaphor. I mean, there's vampires, so obviously there's something fantastical there, but it would still feel like the vampires are just a metaphor themselves, right? But the fact that it's like all of this spirituality and different kind of like fantastical stuff is there, and it's permeating through all of existence. Like it helps to have that character who can be your knowledge conduit, if not an actual literal conduit. So I really, really like that. And it gives you like those just enough exposition to be able to like feel like something's there. So I did want to, the transition that I was getting from there is I did want to talk about, and it kind of goes back to our both sides and different types of music things. And that conversation around music as power is one of the things that I felt, and this did require spoilers, is, we talked about these two sides wanting something, and what they want is this one individual who has this power to connect this through music. But Smoke and Stack believe that power comes through money and influence and all these things, because that's the life they went off and built, right? They went off, they were gangsters, whatever they did in Chicago.
Or Capone.
So they think that's what power is, right? Instill fear, show your place, have money, do your businesses, whatever. Like that's what they believe power is. I think over the course of this film, one of the Michaels B. Jordan, they realized that this music, because they knew their cousin played, but they hadn't heard him because they'd been gone for like 1,000 years. So one of them now can be gone for 1,000 years.
Exactly.
But anyways, they come back and they're like, my cousin, he plays, we'll let him play. Everything will be cool. But when he sees the way people react to him, he's like, this is true power. I want this. The vampire is like, I need that connection to the other thing. I want that. And it's two people warring over an individual, and it's the other people are just sort of bystanders in this thing. Like they have that conversation where he's like, yeah, this is cool, but I'm going to go do my own thing now. And he's like, no, you need to stay here because my juke joint can't be anything without the power that you wield. And there's just something interesting about them both vying over this one person's power. And I just kept thinking about that in a way that, again, don't know what it's doing. It's just super interesting.
Yeah, well, and then ultimately Sammy goes a third way, but which is he does not necessarily pursue power in the way that Smoke and Stack did. You know, of course, it wasn't his choice that everyone gets violently murdered, but he winds up running alone at the end of the movie, right? He runs alone. He does not go with the vampires. He also does not go with his father and the congregation that want him to be a part of their history, their culture, to fit himself into the collective there. He decides to forge his own path as an artist and eventually becomes Buddy Guy, who is a very, very, very influential blues artist who must have consulted on the music in the movie too. He's the guy that like Hendrix learned from. Like most blues infused stuff, like people cite him as a big influence.
Gotcha.
So he becomes that guy instead, right?
Yeah.
In the epilogue,
He builds his own collective in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. But he has the power within himself to create a thing that inspires people and brings people together.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mentioned before that there's a read of this movie of being about like artistic freedom versus conformity. And you could think of the two twins, right? Like Stack, I sometimes got them confused in the beginning of the movie, but Stack tends to be the one who is more showing off his power he seems to be like, he wants to be seen as someone who is a part of the community, who's powerful, who is like equals with the people that he worked with before. And he also, you could argue there's a version of his attraction to Haley Steinfeld, even though she is, in fact, part black. There's a part of his attraction to her that is representing him wanting to be accepted by the white world, or the way that she is able to pass, even though she maybe doesn't want to pass. And he becomes the vampire, right? And he and her live forever, or at least live for another 60 years. And then they are shown as being people who are living the life, right? They're clearly rich. They're living the nightlife because that's all they can. Yeah. That's like all they can do is be in the nightlife. And you can kind of see them as the example of, this is playing the culture game and trying to like win that, trying to like be who everyone else wants you to be, versus Sammy as, well, you could say Smoke, by contrast, decided to go out in a blaze of glory, right? Like he would rather die than let himself be a part of that. And then Sammy forges his own path. And I don't know what any of it means. I don't even know if it's there in the movie or if it's just something I was thinking about, but it feels like it's in the mix also.
Yeah. There's one more thing that I wanted to hit, and just in music stuff, like in film and stories around music, there's sort of two tropes, right? One trope is that people with immense skill got the skill by selling their soul to the devil, right? That's like one type of story, is like, how did so-and-so become so-and-so? It's like, well, they made this deal with the devil. They have this skill. That's cool. Another thing is that like music, like communities believe music is the devil, right? Specifically like religious communities. And usually that is because of the, like, as no pun intended, the sin around the idea. Like music is sexy and it's not buttoned down, and it's like, you're giving into the lust that music gives you. So like usually in these type of stories, the church is scared of music being, quote, the devil, but it's never, quote, the literal devil. But I love that in this story, it is a literal, it's kind of like a kid playing with a Ouija board, right? Like the music has the power to invite something in a way that you don't really, like, you're not prepared for. Like it's doing a connection. It's like, it's Constantine's, if you see them, they see you sort of situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's like saying Bloody Mary over and over again, which coincidentally, this movie has a Bloody Mary. She's the one who sets off the whole event in the juke joint.
I do love too, like, you know, they have the whole thing with like, you can't enter the building. And the idea that like, hey, all we have to do is not let them in. But if you're dealing with a person who's part of your party who is not is not on the same vibe as you, just like the idea that somebody can just yell, "Come on in, you motherfuckers."
Yeah, that's one of those things where like the part of me that cares about plot would almost be irritated because I'm like, why? Don't do that. That's not going to end well. But cinematically, I love that moment.
Yeah.
I love that moment and the energy that it ushers in when you're like, all hell is about to break loose.
Yeah. It's good times.
Yeah. I guess one other thing I want to say is there was a really good conversation on RogerEbert.com yesterday with Robert Daniels, who writes for Roger Ebert, and Odie Henderson, who writes for the Boston Globe, of just two black film critics who disagreed about the movie. I mean, both of them liked it enough, but Odie Henderson was quite high on it and Robert was more mixed on it. And I thought it was a really interesting conversation about a lot of the themes of the movie, including passing and other stuff that I'm not really equipped to get into. But definitely recommend, if you want to hear more than just two white guys talk about Sinners, like, I think this is a super great conversation to go over and read.
Stephen, we're everyone's salvation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And on that note, should we say goodbye to everyone?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.